Hello, and today we're going to be reviewing some of the Ryobi EZClean accessories. This is going to include some of the tips, the flex wand attachment, as well as the soap or foam cannon attachment, and one of the brushes. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, first up we have the soap dispenser or foam cannon. Now I'm using this with an unpressurized water source, so the EZClean has to draw the water up the hose, so it's going to take a second for it to start spraying, so just keep that in mind. But when it comes to the soap dispenser or foam cannon, this is actually a fairly useful tool for when you are cleaning a boat, car, or other objects that you need to spray foam soap at, and well, this is going to be a great little tool for fulfilling that role. This particular tool is going to primarily be made out of plastic with very minimal amounts of metal, mainly just clips in order to keep it together, and it works better than what I was expecting. It definitely pairs better with the 600 PSI EZClean, but it still is functional with the 320 PSI EZClean, and it will definitely do a fairly good job at spraying foam onto whatever object you are trying to clean. This has two different settings on it. The front setting will allow you to rotate the angle of which the spray is coming out. And then on the second setting is going to be a knob on top of the tool, which will allow you to adjust how much soap is being dispensed. Overall, I give this particular accessory an A rating, and I don't really have any major complaints, and it works very well. If there is one thing to keep in mind, however, it is the fact that it is a fairly large bottle, so when you are using this at the end of, say, one of the 320 PSI EZCleans or Hort tools, you're going to find out that it's going to, well, be rather wavy or boingy or whatever the proper term is, and you should definitely be careful if you're working next to something with an expensive paint job. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to, well, other accessories. Okay, next up we have the flexible wand, and this is another one of my favorite accessories for the EZClean, and almost a must-have in my opinion. This is going to make your tool far more useful in a variety of situations, everything from cleaning underneath the vehicle, to working in tight spaces, to even using it as a makeshift shower, as long as you're using it on the low rinse setting. So quite frankly, there are plenty of things to like about this particular accessory. The hose itself is about 6 feet in length, which will give you plenty of room for reaching and getting underneath areas without having to hold the tool super close to whatever you're working on. And well, quite frankly, I'm perfectly satisfied with just about everything about the build quality on this particular tool. Everything seems to hold up just fine, and it is a fairly nice tool for, well, just a variety of different occasions. A few things I would change about would be the fact that the handle is a little bit on the long side, and I would have preferred it to be a little bit more compact for when you're working in a tight setting, such as inside an engine compartment. And the other thing would be the fact that it's proprietary. Like all the EZClean accessories, I really don't like that, and I wish they would have went with a more industry standardized approach. And I also am not a huge fan of this particular accessory's price tag when it's not on sale. But for the most part, this is a fairly nice accessory, and I really do like its performance. So I will say that this also gets another A rating. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, next up we have the worst accessory for the Ryobi EZClean or the Hort EZClean, and that would be the EZClean Power Cleaner 7-pattern rinsing nozzle, aka the thing you put on the end of your garden hose but actually works on the end of the garden hose, unlike on the EZClean. Now, the reason why I'm not a big fan of this particular tool accessory would be the fact that it just doesn't work right on the 320 PSI EZClean, and it barely works on the end of the 600 PSI EZClean. Now, the reason for this is the fact that the EZClean, while it may have a higher PSI rating than your garden hose, it doesn't have the same amount of water coming out as your garden hose. And with an accessory like this, you need a large amount of water coming out through the larger slits on the end of the tool in order for it to work properly. Now, when you're using the power cleaner tips that you'd find on a typical power washer, they're small and don't let much water out, and that's how they maintain the high pressure, and that is what allows them to work properly. On this particular tool, you're not getting that because the EZClean isn't supplying enough water to this particular accessory or tip in order for you to maintain the, well, patterns that this particular accessory promises. And at the end of the day, unless you're using it on the end of the 600 PSI EZClean, you're just going to be getting, well, basically the same setting on every setting, and that setting is going to be, well, drippy water coming out the front. This just is not a great accessory, and it's not designed for the EZClean properly. I think this is something they threw in at the last moment to say, well, look, we have this thing too. And this is also a double disappointment because when I originally saw this particular product, I thought it was going to be a turret that included power washer tips on it, and it does not. It just has crappy tips that are molded out of plastic that are not actual, real, true, well, power washer tips. Like I said earlier, this is basically the same thing that you put in the end of your garden hose at literally 4 times the cost. So I would highly recommend avoiding this particular accessory unless you are looking to hollow it out in order to, well, install an actual power washer turret on the inside of it. So, quite frankly, avoid this at all costs. Moving on. Oh yeah, it gets an F rating. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the 3 settings that you wish were included on the turret that came with your EZClean. And that would be the 0 degree, the most useful, and the 25 degree, and the 40 degree, also a very usable tip. And quite frankly, they're perfectly fine. They get the job done, but I really do wish that they were built into a turret and not individually on the individual tips. And quite frankly, that does make it a little bit of a pain when you're in a hurry or if you just don't want to lose different individual tips. Now, the 0 degree turret or tip does not rotate, but it doesn't really need to because it's 0 degrees. But the 25 degree and the 40 degree tips do rotate, so you can adjust the spraying pattern to the side or horizontally. So quite frankly, that is a nice little feature and is going to be super useful. They still feature the proprietary ends like all EZClean accessories, which means that it will work with your Heart and Ryobi EZCleans, but no other power cleaner or power washer on the market, which is definitely a disappointment. They are definitely smaller than the original turret that comes with your EZClean, so getting them into tight spaces is definitely easier. So at the end of the day, it is a super useful design. I wish they were in a turret form, but it still is nice having these different settings, and at least they did release these different settings finally, even if they're overpriced. So with that being said, I'm going to give them a C rating and move on. Okay, next up we have the multi-purpose brush for the Ryobi EZClean, and it's a jack of some trades and a master of none. Yeah, this isn't going to be the best accessory you can buy for your EZClean. It attaches to your EZClean, and it's kind of attached to the side, so you'll have to basically turn your EZClean when you're working on a flat surface, but it's going to be useful for when you're working on a vehicle so your battery compartment doesn't hit whatever you're working on. The water that shoots out of your EZClean hits a center post in the middle of the bristles and then just falls directly onto whatever you're working on without going through the bristles, which is not the best design in the world, but when you only have a little bit of water coming out of whatever your water source is, in this case the EZClean, it's kind of your only option. I don't know, this just isn't the best option for a tool like this, and there are definitely better designs out there. So in my opinion, this isn't the worst brush, but it's also not the best brush. It's kind of middle of the road. In order to connect it to your EZClean, you can just use your quick connect adapter on the front of your EZClean, or you can use the flexible wand, which this is what pairs best with. And quite frankly, when you're using it with the flexible wand, it's actually a fairly good user experience. This also has the original threading adapter, or the original threading to attach it to the body of your EZClean, like how on the very first EZCleans that were released have the screw-on wand section. But if you don't have one of those, you can just use the adapter that's already mounted on the end. So it's a fairly well thought out design, and it gets the job done. It's just not the most useful for a tool like this. And so, in my opinion, it's going to get a C+ rating. Moving on to the pros and cons. Okay, first up for the pros and cons, we have the adjustable foam cannon. Now, this particular accessory works great. It has an adjustable head, has an adjustable mix, and works with the cheaper EZClean fairly well. But the cons are, well, the price, it's heavy at the end of the cheaper EZClean, and the fact is it's also proprietary to the EZClean system. And next up we have the flexible wand. The pros are, it works great with both the 320 and 600 PSI EZClean. The hose length is very useful, coming in at 6 feet, and it has a nice build quality. And the cons are, well, the handle length is a little bit on the long side, the price when it's not on sale is extremely high, and it's also proprietary. But at the end of the day, it's still a very useful tool or accessory, and so I would still recommend it. And it gets an A rating. And next up we have the 7-position garden shower head thingamajig. Short of it, it has no pros, and it has lots and lots of cons. Moving on. And next up we have the 3-tip set. Now the pros here are going to be that they're small, they have a 40 degree and 0 degree, and they also work fairly well with the 320 psi EZClean as well as the 600 psi EZClean. But the cons are, well, they're rather expensive and they're not in a turret form. So yeah, there's your pros and cons on this particular, well, tool. Moving on. And last but not least, we have the brush. The pros are that it's soft and works with the 320 psi EZClean. But the cons is the water flow is low, there's no soap dispenser, and the bristles are very easy to stain. And that is it for this particular video's pros and cons. Final thoughts on these accessories. I really like the flexible wand as well as the soap dispenser. The 3-tip set can be useful, and well, the brush is so-so. But at all costs, don't buy that 7 nozzle monstrosity. That thing's just worthless. So whatever your personal needs are, I think there's going to be an accessory that will be able to fit your needs, and there are even more accessories out there that I don't own, and quite frankly I wish I owned, but since I buy all my own stuff and Ryobi is having these things be overly costly because they're proprietary, means I probably won't get around to reviewing those for quite some time. So at the end of the day, your own personal needs and your own personal decisions are going to affect what you choose to buy. But for me personally, I would recommend that flexible wand and the soap cannon. And maybe the 3-tip set. And then the rest, it's up to you. See you next time. God bless.